Hi, everyone. My name is Manya, and I'm a UX researcher on Google's Central Privacy and Security UX team. I'm here today with Johanna, who's UX writer for Google's privacy products. Today, we're going to walk through some foundational privacy truths about privacy-related user experiences, that is, users' expectations, attitudes, and needs, and talk through some related design guidelines. Given constant changes in the news, technology, and regulation, it can sometimes feel like privacy-related goalposts are constantly shifting. To make progress for privacy, however, we need to design for it in a way that can scale over time and across different needs. And to do that, we need to understand users' needs with respect to privacy. While technology, regulation, and compliance issues may rapidly evolve, in UX research, what we find is that there's some foundational truths about users with respect to privacy that do remain constant over time. And understanding these truths and using them to drive design guidelines can help organizations of all sizes by providing an anchor for decentralized discussions and advocacy. During today's talk, we'll share 3 privacy truths and 3 high-level design guidelines. We synthesize these truths from themes that emerged in internal and external research studies, complemented by our group's experiences designing and advocating for privacy-related user needs. These themes are drawn from over 100 UX studies from the past 10 years, but date back even further. We then drew on our team's practical experience working across UX research, design, and writing, and products across Google to create baseline design guidance to address the challenges in these truths. So today what we'll do is walk you through the 3 truths and design guidelines with hope that they'll be useful to this broader community. So first, we're going to talk through 3 foundational privacy UX truths. To show how fundamental privacy UX truths remain constant over time, we're going to briefly talk about 2 people from different time periods who have cross-cutting privacy needs. The stories are fictional, but the needs are drawn from real research. As we talk through these 2 people, please think about what privacy needs you as a privacy professional need to address for each of them. In particular, focus on any overlaps and how you might be able to scale solutions across these 2 very different users. So I'd like to start by introducing you to Alyssa. Alyssa is a school teacher living back in 2009. So think back to 2009. What were you doing back then? How were you thinking about privacy? And keep in mind, in the United States in 2009, Avatar was the highest grossing film. PC World magazine called 2009 the year of the social network, but Instagram didn't even exist yet. Okay, so Alyssa. Alyssa loves using social networking sites. She started using them in college and wants to stay online as she starts work as a teacher. Alyssa's also trying to lose weight, and she often sees weight loss ads on her social networking site. She wonders where they came from and worries that her family will see the ads. She doesn't really want to talk to them about her diet plans. And this example could be even more extreme. So for example, Alyssa could be trying to buy a surprise gift and not want other people to know about it. Once, Alyssa was also tagged in an old picture of herself out drinking with her friends from college. She then realized that some of her students' parents could see it. She was embarrassed and worried about her job. So Alyssa worries about ads and embarrassing pictures. But when she sees a privacy reminder pop up on her social networking site, she immediately dismisses it. She wants to use her social networking site for talking to her friends and playing Farmville. She doesn't really want to spend time dealing with privacy settings. So many of you may have thought about users like Alyssa. Reflect back. How many of you have thought about ways to help users who may have posted things in the past they wouldn't want coworkers to see today? And how many of you have considered how to help users who receive ads that they wouldn't want to discuss with others, like their coworkers, friends, or family members? So now let's fast forward. We're in 2019 now. Let's talk about Riku, a financial advisor who's married with 2 young kids. Things have changed from 2009. In 2019, Avengers Endgame is the highest grossing film. IoT is becoming increasingly common, and Instagram is thriving. So Riku loves new technology, and he's invested heavily in IoT throughout his house. At the same time, Riku worries that people who use his smart devices will have access to his confidential work information. His nightmare is that his kids could accidentally call one of his clients, or even worse, call his boss. The other day, Riku's smart speaker activated unexpectedly, which was particularly concerning for him. He went into the settings to try to figure out what happened, was frustrated when he was directed to a page with overwhelming amounts of information. He spent a lot of time on his IoT setup, and now he really just wants it to work. He just wants to deal with it on a daily basis. So many of you may have thought about users like Riku. Reflect back. How many of you have considered how to make sure a home IoT setup is secure and private? How many of you have worked with users who just want to set up a device and then have it work? So I briefly talked about 2 people from different time periods, and hopefully you noticed some overlapping themes in their privacy needs. To help address these overlapping needs, we can focus on specific UX truths that remain consistent over time. So first, privacy is complex and contextual. Second, users' understandings of our systems are shaped by folk models drawn from the environment and interactions with their systems. And third, privacy is often not a user's main goal, even though it's important to them. So first, privacy is complex and contextual. We know that privacy is a complex concept. It has many interpretations. There's no one definition of privacy for our users, or often even within a given company or organization. Privacy means many different things to different people in different places and in different contexts. So in an art project at Carnegie Mellon University, for example, participants were asked to draw pictures of what privacy meant to them. Responses ranged from drawings of locks protecting data, to drawings of being protected from companies, to drawings of just having alone time in the bathroom away from children. Beyond having different interpretations of the word privacy, internal and external UX research shows that people also face different types of security and privacy threats and have different types of security and privacy needs. So here at Google, we often see this in our qualitative UX research. For example, people sometimes worry about Google or other companies accessing their data, but in other cases, people are more worried about government or law enforcement. We also know that when participants worry about privacy, they're also sometimes just broadly worried about hackers, very broadly defined, or even just their general physical safety. And even as technology changes, we know that basic facts about household dynamics often don't. Not everyone in a physical house is trusted. For example, people have visitors, maintenance workers, roommates, and even young children, who they worry about accessing information available on their in-home devices. And to make things even more complicated, across all these threats, users themselves can sometimes make mistakes that lead to unintended consequences. We've also seen similar trends at a more global scale in a large-scale international brand blind survey Google's central privacy UX team runs. Globally, participants are concerned about a range of threats, including hackers, tech companies, and friends and family members. Across these different privacy threats, we also find that privacy attitudes and needs can be really highly contextual. This means that there aren't privacy-sensitive people or not privacy-sensitive people. Instead, what we see is that everyone is privacy-sensitive sometimes. For example, someone might be totally okay with sharing their shopping generally, but at the same time might become very privacy-sensitive if they're searching for an engagement ring to buy. In another example, a participant in a study run by Agarwal et al. Pointed out how in some situations, personal ads can be particularly embarrassing. In other cases, an ad can be personally harmful. For example, if a user wasn't comfortable being out to their coworkers and received an LGBTQ-related ad, the user might imagine negative consequences if someone at their job happened to see the screen while they were browsing on their phone during a break. In the privacy UX space, we also know that a number of cross and intra-geographic and cultural differences exist and can be really important for understanding users' needs and for evaluating the potential impact of design decisions. For example, going back to the large-scale international brand blind survey that Google's central privacy UX team runs, this chart shows how attitudes vary across 15 countries surveyed internally in December 2020 and January 2021. When asked how possible is it for you to have privacy in today's world, in some countries, most respondents thought it was somewhat or very extremely possible. In other countries like the United States, Ireland, and much of Europe, most respondents thought it was only slightly possible or even not possible at all. So the next thing we see is that multiple factors shape privacy attitudes, behaviors, and comprehensions. Folk models are an example of mental models, which are simplified representations of complex systems that people develop to explain what's going on around them. For example, we know that almost all users won't have a full understanding of how the internet works or how Google systems work. Their mental models emerge from a combination of how we design our systems, as well as societal factors like past experiences online or conversations with others. And these mental models will impact users' privacy expectations, concerns, and behavior. For example, research found that there are varied expectations for how data is deleted. And these types of mental models can really influence how people expect our systems to work and their beliefs and understandings of how things work online. We also often see that users will say they care about privacy, but not take action to protect themselves online. And what we find is that privacy, like security, is often not a user's primary task in everyday circumstances. Instead, what they want to do is they want to get something done. So for example, they want to use Google Maps to search for something, and they want to use privacy tools setting education as not their primary focus. But even as users are focused on other tasks, privacy is still a very important goal and underlying value. This means that while they may see privacy tools and settings as a burden, even though they value privacy, they still are important to them. At the same time, privacy can become very important when the user is trying to meet a need. For example, if they want to stop embarrassing content from being displayed or address a risk they heard about in the news. Or a user may have a life circumstance that can privacy needs to the forefront. For example, at-risk users face circumstances that may put them at risk on an ongoing basis. We also see that consumers and experts also often ask for increased transparency, education, and control to address privacy needs. And we know all three of these things can be incredibly helpful. However, we also see that too many of these in the wrong moment without the right balance of others can be harmful. For example, transparency without control can lead to feelings of helplessness or distrust. Or too many controls can lead to frustration. Or any of these in the wrong moment can overburden the user. Because users may have many needs in this space, there's often no right or wrong answer. And designing transparency and control can require ongoing iteration and improvement. We've also found that users want to be able to ask for privacy when they need it, rather than having it pushed on them when they're doing other tasks. So for example, a user may not want a privacy notification while driving, but might find it really useful later on. So now I'm going to pass things over to Johanna, who's going to talk a little bit about the design guidelines that came out of these truths.
Thank you, Manya. I'm a UX writer working on many of our privacy experiences, including consent frameworks, and I'm also really interested in language-focused research, especially in the highly nuanced privacy space. These privacy truths that Manya just spoke about are a constant backdrop for my work, and I'm going to describe how they can be applied in product experiences. Just to note that some of the examples I'll be talking about are from Google, but many other tech companies have adopted similar approaches. This first guideline is about helping people achieve outcomes that meet their individual privacy needs. As Manya pointed out, privacy is not the same for everyone, so it can be difficult to build products that work for everyone. However, there are things we can do in designing experiences that help people get what they need when they need it. By focusing on outcomes, we relieve ourselves from the challenge of understanding people's motivations or explaining in detail what a product or feature does. Instead, we can focus on balancing ease of use with a sense of protection and provide both privacy and personalized experiences. Different product features, for example, those that drive personalization, can have an impact on privacy and trust. Because everyone is privacy sensitive sometimes, we often focus on user journeys and the points on those journeys where privacy might be a factor. For example, someone might see their dental appointment when they open Google Maps and feel surprised to see it there. They might not remember consenting to anything that would make that happen and don't understand how it appeared. By providing them with a clear path on the feature level to more information about how this event got here and what controls are available to manage it, we empower them to set privacy preferences organically, transforming an uneasy moment into one that makes sense. In another example, people can learn more about the results they see in search and use actionable buttons for quick access to related settings and educational content. Another way to help deliver appropriate outcomes is to promote agency, specifically to offer both proactive and reactive privacy and security controls, so that even if privacy is not top of mind, privacy protections are close at hand through things like alerts and notifications that help people react quickly in a bad moment. People might also want to consider things more proactively through checkups and regular reminders about some key privacy settings. This next principle is about addressing the needs of a spectrum of use cases. It's also about respecting a diversity of cultural contexts and people's receptivity to various types of information and controls. Concepts like privacy and personal data have facets of nuanced meaning, and we need to communicate these effectively in our products. To get the linguistic nuances right, it's very important to test our experiences in diverse contexts so that we address privacy issues in ways that resonate. People in different parts of the world think about and speak about privacy differently, so it's critical to adapt our language appropriately and pay special attention to its localization, choosing, for example, the term from among many synonyms that reflects the meaning we intend. Sometimes we may need to transcreate terms or concepts that have no cultural equivalent. Context also has to do with one's state of mind. When we think about educating users about privacy-related things, we realize that they may be very focused on completing a task, not thinking about issues of privacy. Progressive disclosure can help align educational content more closely with a user's task-focused mindset. So we might offer an actionable button that leads to a relevant snippet, which in turn points to an in-depth explanation, or start with info at the feature level and provide an onward path to product level information. Content hierarchies like titles, subheadings, body text, and links to supplemental content are another form of progressive disclosure. The point is to offer expanding layers of detail based on minimally interruptive initial components. It's also important to design an easy path to relevant choices and controls. Quick access to a privacy action is a good example. Here you see a tooltip tied to a fixed UI component, the profile picture, which brings up a menu of shortcuts to onward journeys and privacy-related actions like deleting the last 15 minutes of search history. Deletion hot words in Google Assistant allow users to delete data using simple commands. People can take immediate action in a way that feels natural, easy, and safe. These examples show how the same privacy action can be adapted to work in different contexts. This last design principle is about the importance of craftsmanship. People have different needs and abilities and different ways of processing information, so it's important to offer multiple ways of taking in information. When redesigning the privacy policy, the UX team added illustrations and short videos to break up the content into more digestible chunks and described real-world examples to make complex technical concepts more concrete and relatable. Another way to support comprehension is to craft experiences that are predictable in their similarity. Consistent iconography can serve as a retrieval cue and help reduce the cognitive load on users. Consistent content can have the same effect. Depending on the context, we might use terms like remove, clear, move to trash, or auto-delete to describe a deletion action. The term we choose should accurately reflect the underlying functionality and be used the same way throughout an experience. Inconsistencies can make it difficult for people to develop a mental model and as a result, reduce their sense of control. Designing to avoid these inconsistencies is a huge challenge for UX writers and content strategists, especially when the underlying mechanics are only subtly different, or when different terms in English convey subtle differences in meaning that can't be conveyed in other languages. The final piece of this principle is to balance design trade-offs so that people don't need to. Too many options in a choice architecture are unappealing, as we learned when conducting early research on the data retention flow shown here on the left. Participants wanted to choose options all along the slider, which was also poorly labeled. Fewer discrete options represented as radio buttons on the right were much less ambiguous. Research shows that although people want control, they don't want to do the heavy lifting. They like to set and forget. The goal should always be to enable control without the complexity of too many controls. I'm going to pass this back to Manya now to share a few closing thoughts.
Thanks, Johanna. So we'd like to finish up with 2 takeaways for the PEPR community. So first, privacy UX is a challenging and constantly evolving space. We can start to address it by focusing on how to account for constants, while at the same time thinking about how to adapt guidance to specific product or system goals. We found this to be a useful approach across teams at Google and hope these truths and design guidelines will also be helpful to the broader PEPR community. We'd like to finish up with a challenge. So this is just the start of a conversation. We'd like to challenge the PEPR community to expand and build upon this set of truths and design guidelines. What fundamentals about privacy-related user needs and design would our industry benefit from aligning on? With that, we'd like to thank our co-authors of this presentation, as well as the PEPR community for having us. And please do reach out if you'd like to explore any of this further. We're always happy to chat. Thank you.
Thank you.